Hey everyone, Brian Ellison here. I just want to give everybody a quick update. Things have been going slow for me on this YouTube channel, and there's a good reason for it. So I just wanted to explain what was going on and why I haven't been able to produce as much content as I had hoped to and planned to. Any of you who have been following some of my videos probably know some of these details, but I'm going to use this video as kind of a way to summarize everything that's going on and then give an update as well. So let's see, where do I start? Late last year, October of last year, I decided that I wanted to run a campaign for US Senate. And I decided that I wanted to use this campaign as a platform for activism in order to get out the message of liberty and the message of freedom. And so I've been doing that since October of last year. Here in the state of Michigan, in order to get on the ballot for Senate as a libertarian, you have to get 15,000 valid signatures of voters. Come spring, we were really coming up short on that. So I changed my campaign and I decided instead to run a campaign for U.S. House. And we searched for what we thought would be the best district to run in. I think we made a great choice. We're running in the 8th district here in Michigan. You see, that's me, Brian Ellison, U.S. House 8th District, and it's been a great experience. We've gotten a lot of outreach, and we've gotten in front of a lot of people. In fact, last week I participated in a debate with both the incumbent U.S. Congressman Mike Bishop and our opponent with the Democrats, Ellison.
Running on the Libertarian ticket, Brian Ellison, running as a Michigan representative. What would you do to bring money to fix our Michigan infrastructure?
Well, I think that, I hate to say I reject the question, but I kind of reject the question. So what you're saying is, what do we do to get money? And what that amounts to is us begging for our own money back, and I think that's kind of backwards.
Mr. Bishop.
Thank you very much. This is an important issue, obviously, to Michigan, and I agree with Mr. Ellison on this one. I think we send too much money to Washington, D.C.
We look at the answers that have already been given, and we have somebody who's received more money than anybody else on the stage saying they want campaign finance reform, and then we have somebody who voted for an increase in spending that's contributed to the debt saying let's balance the budget. And I think that's the problem with politics. I guess what I would ask you guys is really to think about when you go to the polls, if you're happy with what government's doing for you and you're happy with the direction the country's going in and you want to see our debt increase and you want to pass that burden on to our children and our grandchildren and our children's grandchildren, then vote for either big government might or deep state slacking.
Okay, thank you very much.
And so, as part of what I did as a candidate is I wanted this to be a platform for activism. So in April, on April 10th, a man by the name of Antonino Gordon was shot and killed by Royal Oak police officers. And at the time, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but at the time this was just really kind of like a blip on the radar. It wasn't something that I gave a lot of attention to or I spent a whole lot of time thinking about. I mean, police shootings happen all the time, right? I mean, there's over 1,000 of them across the country every year. Those are the ones that we hear about. And just police being abusive is just something that regularly happens. In May, 35 days later, a young man by the name of Cody Reynolds was shot and killed by Royal Oak police. And Cody was 20, and he graduated 2 years ahead of my oldest son, Mike. When that happened, it really hit a little bit closer to home, and the fact that this was the second fatal shooting of an unarmed person in a city of Royal Oak, which has less than 60,000 residents, really caught my attention at that point. And so I started looking into it, and I decided to focus a lot of my activism on trying to find out what happened and expose what happened, and most importantly, to try and recommend things that can and should be done in order to prevent further senseless violence on the part of police officers. And so I started by simply making FOIA requests, trying to get information. I started by speaking out at city meetings, and trying to draw attention to the problem and hoping that people would recognize it as a problem and that people would start looking to solve the issues. I also proposed very basic solutions such as implementing a body camera program requiring police officers to carry professional liability insurance to take the risk off of the taxpayers. And I think that the police should be, the police chief should have been held accountable as well. I watched his press conference after the killing of Cody Reynolds, and it was disgusting. The way he behaved in that press conference and in his answers and the way he deflected, I thought was very telling of what was going on in Royal Oak and likely what the problems were. A lot of people really failed to take notice, and a lot of people ignored what I was talking about. And so, as we do, and as I tend to do, I got louder. I started, we did a protest on Memorial Day, and that upset a lot of people. It was at the Memorial Day Parade in Royal Oak, which is a fairly well-attended event.
Today, we reclaim Memorial Day and return it to its roots by recognizing the lives that have been lost in the latest domestic conflict. Citizens have been under siege in this country for far too long. Oppressive government rulers seek to dominate and control the lives of residents of this country. The war on drugs, the war on terror, the war on crime, and every other war that politicians have declared all amount to the same thing: a war on the people. As I stand here today, police are looking for any reason to arrest me and silence me for expressing my dissent to their abusive and deadly tactics. Keep in mind that they did not choose to become victims or veterans in this country's war on people. They were merely pawns in the game of control who lost their lives so the government can maintain control over you.
That's not my two guys.
Who will be next?
And then we scheduled a protest at a police fun run called Run with the Police. There was multiple races. There was like a 5K. There was a half-mile run with the chief, and there was some other events. We staged a protest at that event, and really, again, just trying to raise awareness and let people know what was going on in the city because the media simply was not talking about this. So at that event, I did have the opportunity to talk to several people, let them know what was going on in the city. A lot of people were surprised to hear that there had been these shootings and these killings by Royal Oak Police. Like I said, it simply wasn't being reported on. And so on that day, on June 2nd, at that protest, I was arrested. It was essentially a setup from the beginning. I've posted audio from the officers' transmitters that they wear on their uniform that recorded approximately the 45 minutes leading up to my arrest.
What do you want to touch you?
Yeah, get him out of here.
I have to hold on to him. He asked me to throw him in that car, so. Okay. He's going to get on the course. We're going to arrest him. Right now. So if he gets on the course, we get him. That's what you want to walk down there? Let's just walk down there with him.
So it was obvious from the onset that these officers were focused on silencing me. It wasn't about keeping the peace. It wasn't about making sure that the protest didn't become unruly or violent. It was simply about silencing me and not allowing me to exercise my First Amendment right and get the message out that the police were committing these violent acts.
No, I don't.
You're going to stay off the course.
No, I don't. No, I don't have to stay off the course.
You're going to have to stay off the course, Mark. Just giving you fair warning.
Okay.
Okay?
You got your running shoes on? Don't approach me, man. Don't approach me. Don't approach me.
Like you said.
Stay back, please. I'm unarmed. I'm unarmed. I'm unarmed. Why are you... Seriously, I'm unarmed. Stay away from me. Stop approaching me. Please stop approaching me. I'm unarmed. I'm unarmed. I'm unarmed. I'm trying to cross. Stop approaching me. Stop approaching me.
Get off the bullhorn.
Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me.
Brian, stop.
Get your hands off me. 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 Get your hands off.
So after I was arrested on June 2nd, I noticed that I was starting to get a lot more attention from the local police department. And this manifested itself particularly in noticing that I was being followed, quite often followed by police. So I worked in, if you could imagine, Royal Oak. It's not a box, right? But you have Royal Oak. And in Royal Oak, there in the, what would be, and hopefully I get this right for the video, what would be the northwest corner of the city, basically is where I worked. And where I lived was just outside the city of Royal Oak, on the, what would have been the southeast corner. And so I drove through the entire extent of Royal Oak twice every day of the week. At the same time, I was also coaching softball in the city, and so we had practice, we had games on the weekends, we had games in the evenings, and so I was spending quite a bit of time in the city of Royal Oak at the time. And like I said, I noticed these police officers were following me, particularly when I was leaving work, when I was on my way home from work. And I basically, in order to get from work to home, drove very close to the police station on a daily basis. And so when I noticed that I was being followed, I started just pulling over. That was my first reaction was, well, I'm just going to pull over. They can't mess with me if I'm stopped, so I'm going to pull over. I'll turn off the car if I have to. I'll park it. I'll get out of the car, but whatever. And then there's nothing they can do to me, because I felt like they were just looking for a reason to harass me, to give me a ticket, to give me a hard time, whatever that is. So that basically continued for a short period of time. And then at some point it dawned on me, like, if I stop and they pass me, then they're no longer following me. But why don't I just take it to the next level? Instead of just sitting there, why don't I follow them? If they're in front of me, they can't be behind me.
Yeah. I got one guy following me. I told you he doesn't know how to drive. He's not paying attention. Whoa, what the fuck is he doing, man? Yeah, you can see how slow he can go while staying behind him. He's just going slow, waiting for backup. He is. Look at this guy impeding traffic. Look at that. Where do you think he's going? I don't know, but he won't use the start signal though. That one didn't. Neither did he.
Hey, how long you gonna be? I wanna go get a drink. How long you gonna be? Couple minutes? I'm just gonna go get a drink. Don't leave without me.
Fast forward a couple months. We're now in the third week of August, and I decided to organize another protest. This time there was a groundbreaking for a new police station in the city of Royal Oak, and they were organizing a community event to celebrate the groundbreaking. It wasn't an official ceremonial groundbreaking. It was more of a celebration of the pending groundbreaking that I think may happen later this fall or early this winter. And so on August 23rd, they had this event scheduled. And so I announced that we were going to have a protest on that same day. And really, this wasn't meant to be like an organized protest where we would be standing, chanting, and really just trying to be disruptive. the way that I organized the protest was that I just wanted to, I had small signs, 11 by 17 signs. And really the signs were meant to be provocative from a stance of really trying to get people to think and understand what was going on rather than just throwing it in their face. And so some of the things said, the signs were more suggestive, like don't forget to save money for the lawsuits. My thought being that if I'm walking around carrying a sign at this event that says don't forget to save some money for the lawsuits, people might be like, lawsuits for what? What lawsuits? What's that sign all about? And then I could engage in a conversation with somebody. And so that was my goal. I was trying to provoke a dialogue with people who may be interested in what's going on in the city. So I showed up to the event, and anybody who, I've again posted a video of this event as with the previous arrest. I showed up to the event and I was greeted not so kindly by police officers who told me,
You're welcome to do so.
What you're saying right now, I'm sorry.
I just want to let you know if you're here to protest, which are you? Okay, fair enough, fair enough. What I'll do is I'm gonna have you on that corner there where it's taped off, so you have that whole area.
No, I mean we're gonna walk around.
We can't walk around the event and disturb anybody.
We're gonna walk around for sure.
Fine. If you interrupt the event, I'm gonna let you know you'll be placed under arrest. You can't interrupt the event.
Public is free to walk around in the event, so am I.
you guys can go back to that video and listen to it and see for yourself kind of the details of that event. But ultimately what happened is I was in fact arrested again. And again, this is the second time I'm unlawfully arrested by Royal Oak Police. And at the time I was open carrying my pistol, and because I had the pistol on me, they took the pistol from me for safekeeping.
I got my sign, probably the most important sign here, and we're just gonna walk around. There's not too many people left here. I have a hard time believing that anybody would be disturbed, so we're just going to walk around a little bit. Don't put your hands on me. Do not put your hands on me. Do not put your hands on me.
Get back on the tape now. I'm telling you one more time.
Do not assault me.
Get behind the tape now.
Do not assault me.
Get behind the tape now.
Do not assault me.
I'm telling you, you walk away, you're going to jail. Get behind the tape. You're going to be placed under arrest.
What's the charge?
Get behind the tape now.
What's the charge? Contempt of cop? That's not a real charge. This is this is where we get to the idea of it doesn't matter what the charge is. You can beat the charge, you can't beat the right. That's exactly what this is about. Clearly, you think you're enforcing it. What law do you think you're enforcing?
Get behind the tape.
What's the charge?
Get behind the tape.
What's the charge?
Get behind the tape.
What's the charge? What's the charge? Get your hands off me. Why are you? Nope, I'm not.
Mike, stay away. I'll get it for him.
Are you proud of yourself for what you're?
Why are you arresting him?
Folks, if you need to get back, take a step back.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay.
I'm right here.
You guys can film and.
Can I have that sign? I brought it. I can't have my sign back?
What's your name?
I made that.
Why, officer, why is he getting arrested?
I don't know. I wasn't the arresting officer.
Anybody who's been paying attention, seen the videos, knows kind of what the disposition of the pistol is. I still don't have the pistol. The city refused to return it to me. So shortly after that second arrest, I received a call from my attorney, and he said the city of Royal Oak is putting forth a motion to amend your bond conditions. So my bond essentially up to that point was $500 bond on each case, and there was no conditions. I mean, the first one we waived the arraignment, and there was no bond conditions. It was simply pay your $500 to come to court. And so after the second arrest, I got the notice, and I received this motion that was like, I don't even remember. It was like 8-10 pages plus exhibits. And it talked about it listed out all of these incidents, and most of them were factually fuzzy, I would say. There were some that were, there's some stuff in there that was correct, and there was some stuff that was blatantly false. But a lot of it was fairly accurate if it was interpreted in the correct light. Obviously, it was presented in a light that was harmful to me, and so it was distorted, and that's why I would call it factually fuzzy. That's a technical term. So when I read this motion, I was like, this reads like a professional resume. Part of me wished that it was 100% true, because it was like, it made me look like this incredibly potent activist who is out and really having an impact on policing, and the police are afraid of me, and obviously this is all a farce. What the police were afraid of was being exposed and allowing the public to see the stuff that they're doing on a daily basis. And I thought, when I read this motion, I thought, there's no judge in his right mind that is going to allow this to go forward. We're going to have a hearing. It's going to be hilarious. I'm going to try and record it, and we're going to make a mockery out of the prosecutor who's trying to do this ridiculous bond motion with this overly broad condition that prohibits me from being within 50 feet of any uniformed law enforcement officer on the planet, or anybody acting on my behalf. Well, little did I know that when I went to court on this motion, that the judge would be entirely sympathetic to the prosecutor, and would take the story hook, line, and sinker, and implement this ridiculous bond condition.
And here's how that order read. Order amending bond. At a session of said court held in the city of Royal Oak, County of Oakland on August 29th, 2017, although this was actually in 2018, Honorable Derek W. Meineke, District Court Judge. In this matter, plaintiff having filed an emergency motion to amend bond, the court having reviewed the pleadings, heard the arguments of counsel, and been otherwise advised in the premises, it is hereby ordered that plaintiff's emergency motion to amend bond is hereby granted pursuant to MCR 6.106H for the reasons stated on the record. Defendant and or any other person acting on his behalf is prohibited from coming or remaining within 50 feet of any uniformed law enforcement officer unless defendant and or any other person acting on his behalf has reasonable cause to believe that he/she has been the victim of a crime and is attempting to make an initial report of that crime. Court will review this condition on 9/13. This order does not resolve the last pending claim and does not close this case.
And so at that point, my activism was really restrained. What I'm doing is focusing my efforts in activism on, highlighting where police overreach, police abuse, and focusing on trying to gain police accountability. And so they prohibited me from being able to do that by saying you can't be within 50 feet of any uniformed law enforcement officer. And so, I was kind of shocked by that, but hey, we don't make the rules, and we just try to play by them when we can. And so that kind of situation just continued for, that was sort of August, September. So it went that way for, I would say, a few weeks. That was a circumstance. And in the meantime, I had a couple hearings in front of the judge. And one of the hearings was a hearing on a motion to dismiss that my attorney presented. And our motion failed. The judge said that, there was a question of fact. It wasn't a question of law, so it was a question for the jury, not the judge. And so we scheduled a court date. Well, and the judge, when he initially implemented these ridiculous bond conditions, which is exactly what they are, he said that he'd review them at every court date. And so I have these two cases, and I have an attorney representing me on one case, and I'm representing myself on the other case. And so I argued on behalf of myself at that hearing that the bond conditions, and this was the second time we had attempted to re-argue the bond conditions. I argued that it was putting a lot of restraints on my campaign and on my ability to do my activism. We talked about how the police accountability is important, how it is a means for me to raise awareness, how it's a means for me to raise income, albeit incredibly limited. But it's something that I was doing that was important to me, and it was certainly well within my rights to do so, especially as an independent journalist. And so I argued successfully to some extent on October 5th, and I think it was the 5th. I might have the date wrong. On or about October 5th. And so I asked the judge to change the conditions and make the conditions restrictive so that it only applied to the Royal Oak Police, not every police anywhere on the planet, any uniformed law enforcement, just simply the Royal Oak Police Department, who seemed to be extremely frightened of me. I don't want to make anybody frightened. So I thought, we'll give the Royal Oak Police some space, but in the meantime, I can focus my activism and my candidacy and my activism as an extension of my candidacy on other areas. There's plenty of other police departments that need attention, and there's plenty of other places I can go to raise awareness about and help promote police accountability. After that hearing, the next day, a couple of friends of mine and I went out and we made, we spent the evening, I believe it was a Saturday evening, we spent the evening following a couple of different police officers. One was Livingston County Sheriff, one was the Michigan State Police. It was actually two in that car, and we published a video.
Am I being detained right now?
Once I turn this car around and light you up, you are.
What am I being detained for?
You don't get to just follow us around.
Sure I do. Why don't I? Why don't I?
What do you mean why don't?
Why don't I get to follow you around?
I mean, I guess if that's really what you guys want to do,
it is.
Waste your time doing that. Knock yourselves out.
So
all right.
We're doing it, so leave us alone.
Hey.
So shortly after that, I received a notice that the Royal Oak Police wanted, I'm sorry, not the Royal Oak Police, the prosecutors, Royal Oak City prosecutor, wanted to have a hearing to review my bond conditions. And I never saw a motion. And keep in mind, I'm representing myself on this case. And so since I'm representing myself, I should be served with the motion so I have time to review it and prepare a defense in order to address the issues that are brought forth in the motion. Well, I never saw it. And we had a hearing on Friday, October 19th, I believe it was. And the prosecutor had asked for a review, to review the bond conditions. And what they were asking for was for a substantial cash bond, so for me to put up more cash, and for the restrictions to be re-implemented. So they wanted the conditions to be that I was prohibited from being within 50 feet of any law enforcement officers anywhere, not just in Royal Oak again. And I thought it was ridiculous. This is there's no grounds for changing those bond conditions, but again, the judge decided to do it, and so the judge implemented a $5,000 bond per case, so that's $10,000. He did allow for 10% cash or surety, so I needed to pay $500 per case, so $1,000. And he re-implemented the bond conditions that prohibited me from being within 50 feet of any uniformed law enforcement officer or anybody acting on my behalf. And then he did something that was really interesting because it still doesn't make any sense to me. But he said that he ordered that I be taken into custody until I could be fitted with a tether. Now, there's a few reasons why people would get tethers. There's a couple different kinds of tethers. So there's alcohol tethers and there's GPS tethers. Well, certainly none of my incidents involve any alcohol. I rarely drink, and when I do drink, I have a drink, 2 drinks, sometimes a half a drink, and occasionally I get made fun of for that. But again, alcohol was never an issue for me. So I certainly wasn't going to get an alcohol tether. So I get a GPS tether. And a GPS tether can be, used for any number of things. So say you're worried that somebody is going to not show up to court. Well, I've showed up to every court date, so I'm not sure that was a concern. They can be used to control somebody's movement. So say, you have prohibited areas that you can't go to. Well, there's no prohibited areas that I can't go to, so I don't know how a GPS tether would work in those circumstances. And then another thing that it's used for is to implement like a curfew, right? So they can know that you have to be home, wherever home is, by a certain time, and you can't leave before a certain time in the morning. Well, certainly there's no issues with curfew. So anyway, but then none of that matters. The judge said you will have a tether, and you will pay for it, and you will be locked up until you can be fitted with it. So this hearing was on a Friday afternoon. The hearing was 1:30. The hearing was over at about 2:30. And from 2:30 that Friday until Monday at about 4 o'clock, time was really kind of fuzzy for me, because what happened is I was taken into custody and I was transported to the Royal Oak Police Station, to their holding cells. I was processed for a bond violation, and I was taken to I was held in Royal Oak and awaiting transport to the Oakland County Jail. We did get picked up. There was 8 of us. The jail was full, and it was filling up more while I was in Royal Oak. And I was transported to the Oakland County Jail, where I was processed that evening. I was the last person to make it into my cell, which was a group cell, by the way, that they call a tank. I was the 10th person to be put in this tank. I found a nice cozy spot on the floor right in front of the cell door, where I had my 2 blankets, and I settled in for the evening. I was in that cell on the concrete floor and concrete benches from Friday evening until Sunday, which would actually be early Monday morning at 2 a.m. Then I was moved to another cell. It was an 8-person cell where there was a bunk and a mat. So at about 2 o'clock in the morning, early Monday morning, I was transferred to a cell, and I stayed there until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday. 1 o'clock, 1:30 maybe. I was taken out of that cell, and I began the process to transfer out, to bond out. So approximately 4 o'clock on Monday, I was fitted with a tether, which, as you can see, I've decorated quite nicely. It is kind of doing a number on my ankle here, but I was fitted with that tether on Monday, and then I came home, and the restriction on the tether was that I had to go, when I left the Oakland County Jail, I had to go straight home. I couldn't stop anywhere, and when I got home, I had to stay there until 9 o'clock the following morning, when I could make a phone call to the whatever the name of the company is that monitors the GPS, the tether, and I could get all of my instructions. And so up until then, I was very curious about what were my instructions going to be. Was I going to have a curfew? Were there areas that I was going to be prohibited from? Was it going to be every police department, every police station? And there was no conditions, nothing. What this has done is it certainly has really inhibited my ability to engage in my brand of activism. And unfortunately, I think that it's going to inhibit my ability to engage in my form of activism for quite some time. With that, I will be paying attention to the comments in this video. For those of you that are that watch it all the way through, you have any questions about what's going on with my case, what's going on in general. If you think that I should do another follow-up video, fill in some additional details, I'd be happy to do that. So comment below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe to my channel. And I'm going to start working on piecing together some content that will be less original, but we will be working on highlighting some cases of police abuse, police accountability, with some commentary by yours truly. So I appreciate your help. I appreciate your support. I appreciate any comments that you leave in support of what I'm doing and the goals that we seek. And I appreciate those of you that don't like what I'm doing. I appreciate those of you that comment about how terrible I am. I appreciate all of you. If we all had the same belief, we wouldn't be going anywhere. And so any of you detractors who think that what I'm doing is wrong, also leave your comments below. I'd be happy to engage with you as well.